The Dark Truth of Sunscreen. Let's fucking talk about it. Because no one else is going to teach you this shit, so I'm excited to.
Hi, dermatologist here, and I'm willing to teach you. And it's funny that this person thinks that nobody else is talking about this because a lot of conspiracy theorists are.
If you're like every single human on the face of the planet, you probably think that the sun causes CANCER. And to an extent, you're not wrong.
UV radiation does increase one's risk for skin cancer. We know this for a fact, and we know the mechanism by which this happens.
It's just, why is it? Because 80 years ago, this was not the case. People didn't talk about melanoma 80 years ago.
I'm always very interested by the argument that, like 80 years ago, 100 years ago, people weren't dying of melanoma, we weren't talking about it, da-da-da-da-da. That's like a very level one understanding of public health. So there are several reasons why this is. One, 80 years ago, life expectancy was not the same. And one of the primary risk factors for most cancers is age. So the longer people live, the more likely they are to develop melanoma or many other types of cancer. In addition to that, our ability to detect melanoma and other skin cancers was way worse 80 years ago. Access to healthcare was way worse too. There were probably plenty of cases of melanoma that were never recorded, that we didn't catch, etc. Oh, that's another thing. Tracking of these conditions was not as good back then. Another point that I heard recently that's actually really important that a lot of these people don't talk about is back in the day, were people outside a lot? Yeah, they were, but they dressed differently. Like, you were not seeing people walk around in shorts and a tank top back then in the 1940s. It was much more common to have most of your skin covered if you were going to be outside. And more people wore hats. So yeah, I could go on like this forever.
And then out of nowhere, 1971, what's going on here? What started to be introduced in 1971? Well, after copious amounts of research, because Google really wanted to make this one hard to find, I wonder why, seed oils started getting introduced. Right? The graphs look crazily similar. Soybean and seed oil intake has increased dramatically for those eating the modern industrial food diet.
This is so interesting because a lot of the time people will look at the trend in melanoma and say like, oh, in the 1970s, that's when sunscreens were commercially introduced. And look, the more we use, the more melanoma it is. And da-da-da-da-da. He's proving that correlation does not equal causation in that case and in this case. Just because you can trend two things together doesn't necessarily mean that they are related. I also think it's funny that he's using Google as his source, but I digress. There's probably a lot of other things that you could trend that have been, increasing since the 1970s. Pollution, the availability of polyester clothing, the amount of computers on the earth. So yeah, just because two things are correlated over time, that doesn't necessarily mean that one causes the other.
If you Google, does seed oil cause cancer? Obviously it's going to say no, and this is cancer.org saying this, so you'd think it's a reliable source. But then you realize that the sunscreen industry is $13 billion, so I'm sure cancer.org would take a $5 million donation. But it's important to understand how UV damages the skin and how seed oils increases the damage.
I also think it's funny that people think, these charitable organizations that are run by hundreds, if not thousands of people are like hiding something like this, and like nobody would have the guts to be like, they're hiding the cure for skin cancer. Like,
photo damage happens when UV triggers lipid peroxidation, aka seed oil decay, in the unsaturated fats that hang out in your skin, resulting in this. After you eat the seed oils, they become a part of your tissues, including your skin, and increase your susceptibility to the exact type of oxidative stress that can cause skin damage. Lipid peroxidation is the fuel in the skin, and the UV is the match. So you address the problem, and instead of sunburn, you'll get a golden tan. People are probably saying, like, well, what do I use instead? Avoid everything on the right and use everything you see on the left. Avocado oil, coconut oil. Look at the fucking ingredients on sunscreen next time you use it and tell me you want that shit in your body.
So yeah, the seed oil truthers often talk about this, that, the seed oils become oxidized, and because of that, there's damage to the skin. The reason for sunburning, and also the reason for the mutations that lead to cancer in the skin, is UV damage to DNA. We know this on many different levels scientifically. Like, it always grinds my gears that these people could, go on PubMed, look up a damn paper, and this is decades and decades of research. I also heard Lab Muffin Beauty Science recently talk about this, and she dissected this mechanism and basically showed that if it's true, seed oils would be protective against sunburn. So yeah, I don't get the seed oil truthers. Look, if these seed oil people can produce some data, I would like to see it. Like, if anybody out there can give me a citation about this, I will read it. I would love to be proven wrong. If there was something that we could easily eliminate from our diets to eliminate sunburn and decrease our risk of skin cancer, I would be there. But I don't think that data exists.